chance. You need to bring me her torch.
I say stick to the plan. You know, at this point.
A split vote is when a majority contingent splits their numbers in half to outplay a contestant in the minority that can protect themselves from being voted out. It's a very useful technique and hence has been used a lot. But there were some people that for whatever reason mess up these votes, dooming themselves and potentially their entire alliances. There's nothing wrong with being a no-caller, except when you combine the no-care attitude from the real world with your Survivor voting record. After a few days, the no-caller tribe and Survivor Worlds apart kind of just collapsed. Joe, Jen and Haley were a 3-person group looking to vote out Nina for a combination of her not really clicking with the tribe alongside keeping physical strength. Only they feared Nina had the idol, and so Joe recruited Will as a 4th to vote Nina alongside him, while the girls voted for Vince, and then on the revote they all go for Nina. Knowing this, Will told Nina and Vince about the majority's plan to split the vote, so they combined their votes to snipe out someone like Jen, who was integral to the majority. So in classic Survivor fashion, this vote off is left up in the air on the way to Tribal. What will Will do? Well, there are 2 options. Plan A, he aligns with the majority 3 and votes Nina, or Plan B, he pulls off a blindside with those on the bottom and he takes out Jen. Or Plan C. He comes up with his own plan. And I think you all know where I'm going with this. A small, seemingly insignificant conversation came up as soon as the no-callers came back from the challenge, where Vince told Nina he was concerned about Will being tired after the challenge. Which, may I just say, commenting on someone's challenge prowess is rather ironic after Vince's prior performance. When Nina told this to Will, he then decided to take matters into his own hands. Will ends up voting for neither Jen or Nina, and instead puts his vote onto Vince, blindsiding him in a 3-2-1 vote. This blindsides Vince, Nina who thought she was going home, Joe, and the girls, and honestly Will might have been the first person to blindside an entire tribe, including themselves. This situation is honestly an interesting deviation to what would have happened had Will voted Nina with the majority though. With Vince still on the tribe, if the no-callers go back to Tribal, they could have flipped it on Will if Vince continues to push the narrative that he's weak. But on the other hand, Will ruined his relationship with the no-caller majority and had the vote split on him at the subsequent Nina boot. So was Will justified in ruining the split vote plan? Let me know in the comments. Someone who had far less positives to their actions was the infamous Keith Nale from Survivor San Juan del Sur. Now this is the only contestant in the video that actually wasn't in the majority and wasn't part of a split vote. With that said, Keith still remains the only man in Survivor history to completely blow up an entire tribal, ruin a majority split vote, and causes 2 rogue idol plays by saying literally only 4 words, so I decided he was a worthy addition on this list. After the Jeremy blindside, Reed wanted to snipe the power player John out of the game. In order to do this, he created a pretty ingenious plan. He alongside Alec formed a plan with the majority 5 to split the vote on Keith and Wes. 4 would go towards Keith and 3 towards Wes to burn an idol and ensure one of the duo went home. Except Reed configured the vote split that without him and Alec, flipping it would instead create a 4-3-2 vote where John went home. So it was a perfect plan that nobody could stuff up. Enter Keith. Keith was a lovable dude, but even as identified by the contestants on the show, he didn't really know how to play the game. As a result, at Tribal, Keith blew up the plurality vote plan in one of the most iconic ways.
I say stick to the plan.
This caused the majority's John to play his idol, with some nudging by Natalie Anderson mind you, and he negated all 4 votes. Keith then played his idol on himself, negating 3 votes, but Wes was knocked out by the final 2. So essentially, Keith ruins a plurality vote to outplay a split vote, is forced to burn his idol, loses his son, and then both Alec and Reed at the next 2 rounds. All because he really wanted to stick to the plan. But now on the other end of the spectrum, we're going down under for a contestant on the Brains tribe that made a mind-melting decision. But hey, if International Survivor isn't for you, then hit this timestamp to keep watching Survivor US content. Nevertheless, in episode 8 of Australian Survivor Brains vs Brawn, a tribe swap occurred, resulting in the Yellow tribe having a 4 brawn minority to the 5 brain majority. Except the brains were split into 2 halves, with Cara and George flipping to the brawns immediately, while Laura, Georgia and Rachel were left on the bottom. The only thing the group of 3 had was Laura's idol, but even then the majority planned to split the vote 3-3. George was in charge of this vote split, and to be honest, they definitely could have been clearer on who the split was on, because he was cycling through the different names every so often and who would vote for who. At Tribal, Laura makes a pretty wild move in playing her idol for Rachel, and essentially pulls a Russell Hantz from Survivor Heroes vs Villains. More on that soon. The 3 votes are blocked, but Georgia receives 2 and was seemingly about to receive 1 more, thus making her a victim of a successful vote split. Until we get some really worrying whispers from Cara saying she is confused. Oh dear. Cara ends up voting for Laura and the Brawns are instantly worried. A once safe split vote turned into a 3-2-1 blindside against Danny. Now to be fair, apparently on the show, Danny was threatening to quit, and if so, it explains why Cara let them get eliminated. However, Cara failing at this split vote means she was left out of future plans, or she was only told about them at the very last minute from this point on. For number 2 on this list, we're going to season number 42 to point out a decision that probably changes the entire season. This of course was the final 15 round where 3 groups of 2 had formed in the Valley tribe. The first were Hai and Lydia, the second were Jenny and Mike, and the third were Chanelle and Daniel. These 2 were the equivalent of both the kids that don't know each other, but they're the only 2 left with no partner in an activity that requires a pair. So, more so out of necessity, they came together. Valley lost the challenge and the duo of Hai and Lydia were the targets. As customary with Survivor 42, there was an insane amount of twists, and one of these was the ship wheel dilemma, which caused Chanelle and Taku's Omar to go on an adventure. Back on Valley, Hai and Lydia wanted to target Jenny, and incorrectly thought they had Daniel plus Chanelle with them. There was only one small problem for the majority for contingent. Mike hadn't yet admitted the grace of soccer made him cry, and with a non-activated Beware idol, he had lost his vote. But hey, it was still 3-2. Chanelle also acknowledged this dynamic, so it was rather refreshing hearing her explain to Omar she literally couldn't risk her vote at the ship wheel. Omar understood this, and so he gets an extra vote. Chanelle stays safely in the majority, and all she needed to do was protect her votes. Ah, freak! Crap! Shit! Freak! Oh, I forgot I'm supposed to be nice on the channel nowadays, aren't I? Woo, go Chanelle! Crap, break, crap, break, crap! Chanelle and Omar both risk their vote, causing them both to lose their vote, which was disastrous for Chanelle. On the boat ride back, she identifies her mistake and immediately tells Daniel they now need to convince Hai and Lydia to split the vote, otherwise it will be a 2-2 deadlock. Except this sudden vote change last minute makes Hai very suspicious and the 2 vote Jenny at Tribal. This juxtaposes Daniel and Jenny who'd vote for Lydia. So remember that deadlock? Well, everyone was in it. Daniel immediately shrunk and threw Chanelle under the bus at every opportunity he got. This broke their relationship, Jenny got eliminated, Daniel got eliminated the following tribal council, and Chanelle made it to the merge, clearly on the outs. Had Chanelle not risked her vote, we potentially see a merge with both Daniel and Jenny plus Chanelle, who would likely make it further into the merge, as she's not seen as such an easy boot. With that said, at number 1, we have to talk about a mistake so iconic it's even mentioned over 10 years later. Tyson Apostol, everyone. When there were 9 villains left, the majority 6 decided to split the vote on Russell's alliance. This is because the group collectively said whoever went searching for the idol would be targeted, but this is Russell we're talking about, who is an idol-finding maniac, so he disobeyed the rules. Although, because he went digging for the idol, the majority knew there was a good chance he was in possession of the idol, and so the plan was just to put 3 votes onto him and 3 votes onto his ally Parvati. Except Tyson just wanted the whole ordeal to be over as soon as possible so he could eat hot dogs. When Jeff asks for an idol, Russell stands up to play it, but pretty much makes a suicidal move in giving the idol to Parvati. Russell should have gone at this stage of the game, but instead of Parvati receiving the intended 3 votes, she got 4. Tyson flipped his vote from Russell to Parvati and got himself idled out of the game 3-2. Now in Tyson's defense, he did reveal after the show that he made this move with the expectation Russell would also flip his vote. That way he would get Parvati out and save Russell, a person he wanted to build a bond with, as he figured he had the idol. Instead, Tyson doomed his alliance, as Rob, Coach and then Courtney are eliminated back to back. In an alternate universe, as one of my commenters notes, if Tyson doesn't screw up, Survivor history is completely changed. It's pretty insane to think of a world where Russell idols himself out, and Tyson enters the merge with a solid majority. Potentially in another timeline where Tyson sticks with the plan, he actually ends up winning Heroes vs Villains, but who really knows? On screen now is a video talking about 5-time Survivor were far too stingy with their rewards, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Subscribe if you enjoyed the content as we approach 3K, stay safe, and peace!